You'll start with a piece of cardboard that is about 16 by 20 inches. These should already be cut. Please put your name on them. They all look the exact same at first. We're going to start today by using gloss medium, which is kind of a hybrid between paint and glue. And we're going to use sponges to apply that to the surface of our cardboard. This has a couple of different purposes. For us today, the goal is to kind of paste down old book pages or old sheet music. You can use newspapers, magazines, basically different types of papers to create more visual texture on our background. You can start by just ripping up pieces of the old books or the newspaper. You want them to be not super tiny or it's going to take you forever, but you don't want them to be entire sheets because that tends to look a little bit silly at the end. So you can be a little bit more picky about what you choose, or you can be a little bit more open and just choose whatever types of paper happened to be around you. I've chosen some sheet music and some books that both have a little bit of that age yellowing. If you want to create that on your own, let's say you have a white piece of paper, you can just paint yellow over top of it later. Your first step is to take some of the gloss medium and put it onto the cardboard. You want it to be a consistent layer. You don't want it to be super gloopy. You'll take the sheet of paper and put it on top, and then you'll put another coat of gloss medium on top of that. So it's kind of like a gloss paper sandwich. The gloss medium kind of seals the paper down so we can draw or paint or glue things on top of it and the paper won't peel up later. So that's why we put the gloss layer on top. If the paper you've picked is not sticking down, try using a little bit more gloss and try pasting it in smaller pieces. The types of paper that won't work would be something like wallpaper, fabric doesn't work very well, or really thick or shiny papers like photo paper. You'll repeat this process until the entire backdrop is covered with the newspaper. A lot of this won't end up showing in the final product, but what this does is it creates another layer, so you have another medium right away, and it creates more visual texture. So there's these added little details that just add interest to your project. I try to be a little bit careful about the edges of my project. Some people don't care and they just cut the edges at the end to make them look neat and orderly. So do whatever works better for you. If you choose to use magazines, you're totally welcome to. These may not stick down as easily as book paper, but they do come with a lot of unique colors and textures and pictures. Newspapers will work exactly like the book pages. They're pretty easy to stick down. Once you have that completely finished, you're going to rinse out your sponge, so get all the extra gloss off of the sponge. Make sure the gloss lid is on tight. This gloss is actually pretty expensive and we have to share it and keep track of it all week, so keep that lid on. You'll take the sponge to the sink. You have to rinse it out well. If the gloss dries in here, these become a solid rock of uselessness. So please rinse them out well enough that when you rinse the water out, it runs clear and there's no gloss really left in the sponge. And then there are white buckets with water that are sitting next to the sinks, and you can just place your sponge in there. Once your backdrop is completed, you can probably start looking through the boxes of different mixed media materials. All of these should be up on the front desk. If you have trouble finding them, you can ask Fia or you can ask Tyra and see if they can help you find some of the boxes. But I like to look through all of them and find some objects I like before I start gluing things down or deciding to paint things. It's generally good to have a pile of stuff that you know you want to include that matches the different sketch or the idea or the theme that you're going with. So I'm doing a little bit of a landscape, and I want the sky to be blue, so I'm just going to take a little bit of blue paint and water and add a wash to the top of my collaged background. Now, my background is dry. Yours is going to need to be dry if you want to glue or paint or draw on top of it. If you paint on top of your backdrop, whether it's magazines or newspaper or books, and you can't see the words anymore or the pictures, it didn't serve a purpose at all. It was just a waste of time to glue down that extra paper. So by adding water to create a wash, we're able to create a translucent or see-through layer of paint. So we can still add the color we want, but then we can still see the colors, textures, or words, or music notes, or whatever happens to be on the paper below it. When you're adding a wash, if it's a little bit too dark of a color, add a little bit more water and spread it around. If you sealed your backdrop down really well with gloss medium, the paper shouldn't peel up when you're doing this. It should stay completely flat. It has a layer of gloss on top of it, sealing it to the cardboard. Now, I know I don't need my blue wash of paint to go all the way to the bottom, since I'm going to be gluing those cardboard hills that I cut out. So I'm just going to paint about 2/3 the way down, so I know that when I glue the cardboard on there, the sky will be blue. I'll double check that it's far enough down, and it looks like it is. So you don't have to necessarily paint the entire surface if you know part of it's going to be covered up. Please store these on the drying rack when you're finished with them.